it is likely the biggest day in the history of the Xbox Activision acquisition. As the wheels of justice or regulatory courts continue to turn, today is probably the biggest day in the Xbox/Microsoft Activision acquisition, because all the friends and family are in Brussels right now as we're recording this, as Microsoft makes its case for why it should be able to close the deal and spend nearly $70 billion dues to lock up Call of Duty and many other titles under its Xbox portfolio of games. So what is going on right now? Well, it started early off this morning with Brad Smith, who I am not. I get tagged on Twitter all the time, people saying I'm Brad Smith. I am not. I'm Brad Sams. But either way, the morning kicked off with this. Brad Smith, the chief legal counsel, leading the charge of this regulatory hurdle jaunt, by saying this and posting it on Twitter. It says, Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players the same day as Xbox. That is key, with full features and content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to more players and more competition to the gaming market. Now, as I noted, they are in Brussels right now talking to the EU regulatory bodies. This is not a coincidence that this statement came out exactly the same time, because that is what they're doing. They're arguing their case, saying, look, we're going to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo. Those players have never even had the option. That's why we should be allowed to buy this company. And so that is just one of the many narratives that are going to be playing out as Microsoft continues to make this hurdles and jumps and bobs and weaves to get through this, because there's going to be a lot of concessions that have to arrive. Now, who all is in the Europe right now doing all this? So obviously there's Brad Smith, there's Phil Spencer, there's Bobby Kotick. Microsoft reportedly has 18 people there, according to Bloomberg. Also there are Google, Nvidia, and we can almost guarantee that Sony is there as well. Now, there were rumors last week that Sony was in Redmond talking about Call of Duty. Now, we're jumping to a little bit conclusions there, because what was really reported, if I understood it correctly, is that they were tracking private Sony jets, and they went to Seattle or Redmond specifically, or that area, and that's what the people were saying. Look, Sony's there. Look, we've got the court case next week. This is what they're trying to figure out, and maybe they've come to some sort of agreement, but we don't quite know, and that is perceived to be why they were in the Seattle area talking to Microsoft, because obviously right now they are in Brussels. So Microsoft is clearly trying to do the same thing here with Sony, where they lock it up for a 10-year agreement. And obviously, we all know what's been happening with Sony, and they're saying, no, we don't really want to be doing that. And so now it's into the court. So why is today so critical? Because it was, I believe, last week or not too long ago, the EU, the regulatory body, came and said, look, here, Microsoft, here, and private, by the way, here are the remedies that you have to figure out so that we will approve this transaction. So Microsoft had time to go together and figure out what could they do. And now they are presenting their remedies to the EU courts and saying, look, this is what we will do. And they will have to go back after this. The courts will have to go back and look at what Microsoft is offering and saying, is that enough justification and validation to allow this transaction to go through? Are they going to provide enough? Are they going to give enough? Are they going to make enough promises in contract and legal writing to make sure that this doesn't actually impact and harm consumers or gamers at the end of the day? And now, I guarantee Sony's there also probably coughing in the background saying, no, everything they're going to argue and provide, we don't agree with or don't think it's going to happen. We don't really know. Now, what we do know is that April 11th will be the day is when we are expected, as long as there isn't any sort of pushback or delay, of when the EU courts will actually make their announcement. Now, the question becomes, what if the EU courts do not approve this? I think that if the EU courts do shoot this down and say, there's just no justification, Microsoft's remedies will not do it, and we can't get to an agreement, I think the deal is absolutely dead at that point. And I think what they try to do with the FTC, I think at that point, more than likely, they might just walk away. I'm not quite sure, but we'll have to see. Right now, Microsoft's getting a good temperature of how the courts are feeling, because they're going to be right there with the people who are going to decide their fate, whether or not they can spend nearly $70 billion to grow and enhance their gaming portfolio. Now, the real interesting scenario, the super interesting scenario comes, what if the EU courts do approve this? They come back and say, you know what, these remedies on April 11th are good. And then the FTC comes back and says, nope, we're not going to let you do it. And so then what happens? Then it's a really awkward game of a little bit of a dance there, because Microsoft could, I don't know, that those are the two main bodies that they need. Obviously, they have things going on in the UK where the UK is like, look, you got to get rid of Call of Duty and World of Warcraft, and then you can buy Activision, but then you're not even really buying Activision at that point. So it will be super interesting. Today is the big day where Microsoft will walk away from this meeting, which is still ongoing. They will walk away from this meeting and they will have a gut check. And so Bloomberg says, Bloomberg actually got to talk to Brad Smith prior to this meeting, and he says, I think we'll make clear that our acquisition of Activision Blizzard will bring more games to more people on more devices and platforms than ever before. This is according to Microsoft President Brad Smith. He told the reporters, he said, we're more than willing, given our strategy, to address the concerns that others have, whether it is by contracts like we did with Nintendo this morning, or whether by its regulatory undertakings, as we've consistently been open to addressing. So that is straight from Brad Smith. I think Microsoft is willing to do, I wouldn't say anything, but just about anything to make this happen in terms of guarantees and promises of bringing Call of Duties to additional platforms. At least that's the gut feeling, or the feeling of the market right now. The big question becomes, is it enough? Is that enough? Or the court's going to say, which I think we can all see how they could say this, like, look, Microsoft, you're already too big. You're a tech giant. You don't need all this. It's better for the market without it. We don't really know. But this is going to be a fun day to watch, because I think Microsoft will come out and then it'll leak about how the courts went and what was actually said. And more importantly, what are the remedies that Microsoft are truly offering to the EU? This is something we still don't fully know. What are they going to do? We know that 10-year contracts seem to be justified. We know that linking promises with companies like Nintendo is already happening. And the other thing that you can't ignore is also that Stadia has died, effectively, during this acquisition process. That's how long this has been going on. Stadia wasn't born and died in the same period, but we've got that. You've got Nvidia over there. The real awkwardness, let's just say that Nvidia and Google and Sony all come out and just really trash Microsoft and say, look, you can't buy this. That's really awkward, because Nvidia is a big partner with Microsoft. Microsoft buys a lot of their GPUs. Microsoft supports them on Windows. And so if Nvidia is up there just trashing Microsoft, Microsoft's very clearly, next time Nvidia wants to do anything, you can almost guarantee that Microsoft is going to be against it. Obviously, they have a little bit more friction-based relationship, if you want to call it that, with Sony, but Sony does use Azure. Sony also does sell products that run on Windows. And so there's also some awkwardness there, but less so, in my opinion, than with Nvidia, where they are a massive partner for buying GPUs for their data centers. There's a lot of AI stuff going on. Neural nets use a lot of this stuff. And so I don't think Nvidia is going to come out super punchy here, but more so like, hey, we have a game streaming service. We got to be involved here to make sure our interests are covered. But I don't see them swinging too hard at the end of the day. So anyways, the next big dates, at least related to this, should be April 11th, but we will definitely be getting more news from the leaks and understanding what Microsoft's remedies are. And I'll be very, very curious to see how far Microsoft is willing to go. I bet they're going to be able to walk right up to the line of spitting out Call of Duty and maybe World of Warcraft onto their own companies and doing everything potentially but that. So we shouldn't have to wait too much longer. And as always, if you want to stay updated on everything happening in the world of Xbox Beyond and acquisitions in the world of Microsoft, make sure to keep it subscribed here, because the only BS on this channel is me.